Red Sox are 500 to begin the 2023 season and fall in Game 1 of the Rays series.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Ignaszewski, and here, as always, with my co-host, NESN's Lauren Willand. We hope that everybody had a great weekend, maybe not as relaxing as you might have wanted it to be with everything that went down with Adam Duvall and the question marks on, is he going to go on the IL? Does he need surgery? But luckily, we found out on Monday night, according to Alex Cora, he will not need surgery, luckily, and luckily it's only a fracture. So, deep breaths out. But at the same time, who said April was going to be easy?
I know, that's the thing. Anything can happen in April, and obviously injuries stink. Injuries are a part of the game, but I think that they avoided a bigger disaster than this could have been because he doesn't need surgery. Yes, the fracture still needs to heal, but it just takes time. That's all you have to do is just wait. And maybe, yes, that's going to stink for his power, but he had the surgery last year on his wrist. He came back and he did miss most of last year after he underwent that surgery. And he came back really strong this year. So hopefully he kind of has that same mentality and the same numbers. I mean, obviously the same numbers would be nice if he can keep up that 455 batting average when he returns. But hopefully we get a clearer timetable of when he will be back. I would say, I'm no doctor, but like 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 4 to 8 weeks, and that kind of 4 to 6, 6 to 8. But I'm just happy that he doesn't need surgery because selfish reasons. Of course, he's one of the best players on this team, but also in the human regard, like that's just such a setback for someone who is having such a strong start to the season. But this is probably the best outcome given that it could have been much, much worse.
Especially for it being the same exact wrist.
Yeah.
And, I texted one of the beat reporters for the Sox this afternoon asking, have you heard of any timetable? Because I was just trying to think in my mind of other options outside of Dalbec. Obviously, you spoke more about like him being recalled and everything like that in last episode. But essentially he said that they haven't announced anything. And so according to Ian Brown, though, he ended up reporting yesterday prior to when this all came out of no surgery and it's only a fracture. He said from what they heard from yesterday from the radius fracture, he'll miss a minimum of weeks, he said in quotes. So typically 4 to 6 weeks to heal or so. And so we could see Duvall be out of action for, 2 to 3 months. And so, the big question, you spoke about Dalbec yesterday, but in my mind, the first thing that came to me is, does that mean Kike goes to center field and what's going to happen with shortstop? Cora obviously talked about a lot of the moving around, but how much trust do you really put in Bobby Dalbec to play shortstop or Yu Chang to be, the semi-primary starter, to fill in and, how will this moving around really impact, different players on field performance at the plate and, being able to readjust and everything like that. And, the one thing that came into my mind is, since it could be months, is this the time where you give Jarren Duran a shot? I don't know.
It's a flawed roster overall. Even before the Duvall injury, this roster was a bit flawed. And Kike Hernandez, he's an incredible athlete, but he has certainly struggled at shortstop. And I just think putting him in center where he thrives and where we know he's a very talented outfielder would probably benefit the Red Sox and him. But for Jarren Duran, I don't know. I think it's the center field position's a bit logjammed already. And are they a better team with him in the lineup? That we won't know that until he would get an honest shot. But there's, that outfield is left-handed heavy. I don't know if there's actually a spot for him, but then you talk about Dalbec at shortstop, and it's flawed. He doesn't have a ton of experience there. He played 2 games at short in Worcester, but this goes back to the offseason and not filling the holes where you truly need them. And yes, Trevor Story when he had the injury, but you had the opportunity to go out there and get someone. You had the opportunity for it to not even get to this point. And it's just, I don't know, because Duvall's injury puts it doesn't make or break the Red Sox by any means, but
Mhm.
they're really, really thin up the middle. And this goes back to the offseason. This goes back to last year and not re-signing Xander Bogaerts or agreeing to a deal, not 11 years by any means, but this could have all been avoided. And now you're
Mhm.
putting Bobby Dalbec, who has struggled, I feel like, at every position you've put him at a position that is incredibly difficult. I mean, it's baseball. Baseball is difficult, but a position that it's difficult. He doesn't have a ton of experience at, and one that Red Sox fans are going to look at for a long time until there's somebody reliable in that position and be like, oh, okay. Like Marcelo Myers years away from being ready. You're not going to call him up to fix this void at short. But like I said, it's a flawed roster. There are places that, Durant could play. I don't see that. I don't see it happening, but baseball's weird. Stranger things have happened. Ryan Brazier's still on this team. So we know anything can happen.
And I think, this was sort of a joke, last year, especially if, the Sox were being blown out. Bobby Dalbec's at shortstop. But, I think there's worse options to go over there. And when I spoke with him, a few weeks ago, you can listen to that recent episode that we dropped last week with Bobby. And, he sort of said to me when I asked him, where do you feel more comfortable? Your non-primary positions of second base or shortstop. And he said, on the left side of the infield, that's where I'm most used to. And I think it's something where he's going to have to get used to it. He brought up yesterday that he's only played 2 games at shortstop so far in Worcester. So he hasn't had tons of experience outside of obviously what he did in the spring and what we saw over the last few years or so. But I agree with you. I think this goes back to obviously not being able to get the right pieces. And I think as well, when the Red Sox did make the decision to ultimately put Mondesi on the 60-day IL and have him not be able to, be activated for 2 months, they didn't expect, this injury. And, you can never predict injuries like that. But at the same time, that's why you try and build up the depth to be able to, avoid these types of things.
Yeah, you can't just plug and play because Kike Hernandez is a second baseman doesn't mean he's going to be fantastic at shortstop. Yes, he's not the worst, but he does the errors are concerning. And I said on Monday's episode, maybe it's just an adjustment, but at the same time, this all could have been avoided. There didn't need to be an adjustment period. And I mean, center field is fine when he's not out there. I don't know. I mean, now Bobby Dalbec's got glasses. Maybe it was all that maybe he just couldn't see. And listen, I wear glasses. I can't see. Far. Yes. And I can't see anything when my glasses are off. I am blind. Everything is just blurry. And maybe that's what was wrong with him. I mean, you saw it with Jameis Winston in the NFL. He could not find his teammates because he was so blind. And then he had the LASIK surgery. So maybe just getting a clearer vision, quite literally, will help Bobby Dalbec on the field and at the plate. I mean, he had a pinch hit single, I think, today or Monday. So, I mean, it's one game. It's one at bat. We're not going to put all our eggs in one basket. But, I mean, he's here. I don't have a choice. I have to give him an honest shot. And let's just see what happens because it could surprise us. It's just a shame it's got to this point. And now he's got all this pressure on him.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think this is his shot. We talked about, Durant getting his shot, but, we thought all about this throughout spring training. If they do ultimately get sent down to Worcester, there's going to be a point where somebody gets injured and they get the opportunity to show that they are here to stay. And this is Dalbec's shot. And he's hit relatively well in Worcester thus far, had a lot better plate presence. We've seen the walks go up massively and it's hit relatively very well down there. And so I'm curious to see, mainly where the Red Sox really do play him. That's the biggest thing that I'm curious about. And, another name too who could potentially fill in is Ref Snyder. We saw him have a great catch on Monday night up against the wall in center field. But, how much really are you going to put on Tapia or Ref Snyder to really be able to fill in? And I'm curious to see how much of the movement there really is between Kike from shortstop to center field. But, interestingly enough, I decided to look into some of the numbers surrounding, Duvall and how much of an impact he really had on this offense. And Red Sox batters outside of Duvall are hitting 281, which is a little bit higher than I expected it to be, honestly. But Duvall also has 25% of the RBIs so far in this team. And so he's one of the biggest reasons why they are scoring runs. And we obviously saw in the Rays loss where the Red Sox, only were able to muster up 3 hits and got shut out. Those runs and those clutch hits that Duvall was able to make are starting to already make sort of an impact in this lineup.
It's funny, when I was watching the game with Derek, he was like, could have used Duvall's bat today. Yeah. And it's, that's the difference in a 1-0 loss, is someone like his bat, or if Rafael Deverson strike out with the bases loaded. Crazy. And, it's issues that they've had last year, leaving men on base and not swinging at pitchers they should be, swinging at pitches they shouldn't be. But, one person, doesn't make all of the difference, but he's making a huge impact. Like you said, 25% of those RBI, that's a lot when you in perspective through the first 8 games of the season, when he's contributing that much, and it hurts. And they need that next man up mentality more than anything. And I think, Monday's loss, it sucked. Okay. 1-0 loss, but it could have been much worse, especially going against the Rays, who are undefeated, still undefeated. But Nick Pivetta looked good. It was just the offense that couldn't come through. And I could say a lot about this team in particular, like this team and Duvall's injury, but his bat is already missed 1 game from his weeks-long absence. At least we don't even know timetable yet, but his bat is clearly so important to this lineup that they need to figure out how to replace it, or at least get somebody who's serviceable enough to at least drive in some runs. Who is that? I don't know.
Yeah, they just need some sort of spark, because that's what Duvall really was.
Right.
And I'm curious to see, obviously we won't be able to really know this unless we had, a time machine was able to avoid Duvall's injury. But I'm curious to see with some of these situations that they had, with runners on base, ducks on the pond, whatever you want to say, but how Duvall really would have, potentially helped some of those, runners be able to score or whatever. But, woulda, coulda, shoulda. And, I think that's the biggest thing for them now is really trying to figure out who is going to be that spark plug. But we're going to go more into Monday's loss to the Rays in our second segment. But before we do that, Lauren wants to talk to you about SoRare.
So our new sponsor is SoRare, and it's a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace, and it transforms fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. It's unlike any other fantasy baseball platform. SoRare managers truly own their fantasy experience. They collect, they buy, they sell, and they compete with other players' cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards. So it's a win-win at the end of the day. And there is absolutely no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next level competitions and rewards. So SoRare recently partnered with MLB All-Stars Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez to serve as their brand ambassadors. Both are featured in SoRare's current brand campaign and will engage with the SoRare community throughout the season at MLB events. So that's a pretty cool little tidbit there with SoRare, where they're connecting with MLB players and they're just kind of making it even more realistic for those who play. MLB game weeks happen twice weekly and span a 3 to 4 day cycle. So at the end of game weeks, MLB managers who rank at or near the top of their leaderboards win a variety of rewards, which can include SoRare scarcity cards, game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys, and VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. Prizes may vary depending on your competition, but they are all still pretty cool prizes to win. So head to SoRare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SoRare.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic awards. Again, that's SoRare.com/lockedon to start playing today.
So now looking at this Red Sox loss in game 1 of the Rays series, and you brought this up in the first segment, the Rays are undefeated. So it wasn't like a massive surprise, but it was unfortunate how it ultimately unfolded. In the 8th, Chris Martin ended up, allowing a home run off of Brandon Lowe. And as you mentioned, Rafael Devers had bases loaded, and I literally tweeted right before he ended up ultimately striking out, looking, you couldn't have had a better guy up in this type of situation with a 0-0 game. And this is actually the first time in his career that he's struck out 3 times looking.
That's such a crazy stat that it's the first time looking all 3 times. But it's funny, like the second that he was up at bat, my brother texted me saying Rafi trying to end this game in the 8th, and then I'm like, and he strikes out. So it was just like, it would just happen so fast. But I mean, that's the guy you want at the plate. That's your big offseason extension signing. This is the guy that does hit home runs. I had a grand slam over the weekend that we know has that power. And I mean, he looked like he was swinging for Miami the way he swings. He has such a powerful swing where I'm like, he's going to throw his back out one of these times, just completely just like dislocate himself from his back the way he just puts everything into that swing. But it was so like, why didn't you swing at that what, like that was the pitch. That was, I think I might have just like yelled or just like groaned at the TV because I was just like, man, and I get it. I'm not a baseball player. I'm not trying to chase these pitches going 90 plus miles an hour. But Rafael Devers knows what to do. And you have the bases loaded. You could have put the game away right then. We'd be singing a different tune if he just connected on that. But
even if it was just a single, that's how you
need right. Well, yes, exactly. Just put the ball in play. You don't have to swing for the fences. Just get it into the outfield, bloop, single, anything. And he just stood there with the bat on his shoulder. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I think that's when I knew, like, it's going to be that kind of game. It's like a 1-0, 2-0 loss. And then boom, Chris Martin gives up the home run. And I was like, all right, let's text Jake and let's get this show on the road.
And, prior to all that, the Red Sox pitching was shoving. It was the first time the Rays have been shut out before in the first 4 innings all throughout the season. They're the hottest offense in the league. And, we saw Pivetta looked really good 2 starts in a row. And, don't want to get my hopes up because we know how he is. He fluctuates so much. But, 3 hits over 5 innings, 6 strikeouts. And, he looked pinpoint. And it was interesting, too, because, even on the ref Snyder play where, he made a spectacular play in center field, you saw Pivetta a little bit upset at himself, just trying to be hard on himself to be as perfect as possible. And that's what you want to see from your pitcher, but at the same time, you just got to be excited with how he's performing, especially in the 5 spot.
Yeah, another 5 innings, 6 strikeouts. That's what we like to see. You'd like to see other things, the hits eliminated, but no earned runs. And I think that's the big thing here. And Pivetta he looked in control. And this is the Pivetta that fans want to see. This is the Pivetta that if he can be this consistent throughout the year, that's huge because he's not going to miss a start. He's going to be reliable. He's going to be sturdy out there. And 6 innings, that's you've gotten 5 innings he went today. You've gotten 5 innings from several of your starters. And it's like, okay, this is what we need. Maybe it was just 1.5 times through the rotation, just kind of get that rust off. And even Chris Sale bounced back after walking those 2 straight batters and settled down. So very positive outing for Nick Pivetta. And hopefully that sets the tone for Garrett Whitlock, who's going to make his debut, 99% most likely going to make his debut on Tuesday. So hopefully that kind of sets the tone. And then Garrett Whitlock can go out there and kind of replicate, what Pivetta's done and what Whitlock has done throughout his rehab and just show that he's built up. But it is his first start, so I'm not going to be mad if he only goes 3 or 4 innings. But seeing what Pivetta did on Monday was definitely encouraging, especially because, and I understand why, but a lot of people were down on him. A lot of people wanted to move him to the bullpen, and people didn't even want him on this team. But he showed like maybe that's just what he is he's a 4 or 5 starter. And if that's your 5 starter, and he can do something like this 9 times out of 10, I'll take it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And, I was thinking about this with how everything was set up, especially in the rotation to begin the season with all the injuries. Honestly, outside of Chris Sale's first start where he blew up, same with Corey Kluber and Cutter Crawford, everything else has gone really smoothly with this rotation. I don't think you can really complain. Like the results that they have gotten have been much better than I think a lot of people anticipated. Now, I think the offense needs to channel into what they were able to do against the Tigers. But I think you got to be pretty satisfied with how this rotation is ultimately done, with how this bullpen is played out too. It's great to have a weapon like Josh Winkowski in there. It continues to shove like we saw on Monday, 2 innings, 1 hit. Nasty strikeout. His sinker continues to look unreal. And I think he's really cementing himself in this bullpen as a mainstay.
Right now, yeah. He looks really good. And that's what you want to see because even though the bullpen didn't have a ton of questions going into the season, there were still, a few guys in there where people were like, what is he going to do? How is he going to impact this bullpen? And he's shown it. He's 100% shown that he can and should be in this bullpen right now. And I hope that trend continues because you want that reliability in there and you want somebody who can throw strikes, who can get guys out, and who has confidence going in there, whether it's 1 inning or 2 innings. So I've loved what I've seen from him so far. Hope we see more of it. And I think that, like you said, he's continued to kind of make a name for himself and continue to be a mainstay in this bullpen. And it's a much different person than we saw last season. That's for sure.
That is for sure. And, especially, you already mentioned it with Whitlock, most likely starting on Tuesday. That's sort of what Alex Cora said with a laugh after Monday night's game. I think the obvious thing is Tanner Houck goes into the bullpen, but, I wanted to mention he's been a lot better than I
Right.
expected as a starter. He does still belong in the bullpen, in my opinion, but I got to give him his props. He did really well in the each spot that he did. Obviously, in his first start, ultimately was really good in the 5 innings, and then we saw him do what he's normally done as a starter, and sort of allow a few runs here or there to make the start look a little bit worse than it actually is. But you got to be satisfied with what he was able to bring, and ultimately, I bet the Sox front office as well as Alex Cora are really excited for not only Whitlock to come back, but some of the other starters that are making sort of their rehab assignments, like Bayo and Paxton and everything like that. I'm excited to see how everything obviously plays out in terms of the roster, and we'll speak more about that in our third and final segment, as well as preview a little bit of Garrett Whitlock's potential season debut on Tuesday. But before we do that, I just wanted to talk to you about FanDuel. So grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now new customers can step up to the plate with a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to fanduel.com/lockedon to sign up to place your first bet and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. You can potentially, pick up like an Aaron Judge home run prop. You can do, Kike Hernandez, Christian Arroyo hit prop. Then you can also, as well, if you're feeling really lucky about the Sox or another team, you can do a same game parlay to not only make even more money, but continue to add up some of those wins over on FanDuel. So don't miss the chance to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to fanduel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And now looking into a very big Tuesday for the Red Sox. So not only is Garrett Whitlock most likely making his season debut, but Brayan Bello will make his first official rehab start with an affiliate. He's been doing, these simulated games down in Fort Myers, but now he'll finally be making a start in Worcester.
I'm really excited to see what he can do. I mean, this is his first, full season as a starter. The forearm tightness certainly was discouraging, but he's got a big workload ahead of him. And pitchers deal with this kind of stuff all the time, but I'm really, really excited to see what he brings to the Woo Sox on Tuesday. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that, seeing what his command looks like, his velocity, and how he just kind of commands that strike zone, because that's going to be really important. Because no, there's not a dire need for another starter right now, but if he can just kind of be really strong on Tuesday and just kind of be almost like a seamless fit into this rotation, that's great. And we don't know if it's going to be one start. We don't know if it's going to be 2 rehab starts, but I think a lot hinges on what he does on Tuesday. But it's exciting. People are getting healthier, and people who are supposed to be really big parts of this team are getting healthier. So that's always a plus. You're not missing too much time. They're not away from the team for too long. And hopefully it goes well. That's all we want. I just want, is 5 innings asking too much? I don't think it's asking too much. That's what I want. I want 5 innings.
That would be nice. And especially if we're able to see what we saw in his spring start where he had pinpoint control. And I think another aspect too that I just thought about is, he was really effective when he played for the Woo Sox last season for his short stint prior to when he got ultimately called up to the big leagues. And Paul Abbott was his pitching coach, and it helps being able to go back to an affiliate that you're comfortable with in a spot where you've played before. And if maybe he does not go right, or things don't go exactly how he might want to, knock on wood, he's got a pitching coach there where he feels comfortable with. And I think that definitely helps when being able to come back and going to a place and being able to work with a person like Paul Abbott where he's comfortable. And he was able to have success with on the mound a little bit last season. And I think especially with what we've seen, how they've really wanted to progress him a little bit slower, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit more than one start, just being as safe as possible. But I'm really intrigued to see what he's able to bring in, as well as Whitlock, because we saw him go 6 innings in Worcester. So, Whitlock also had a 75 pitch limit. So I'm very curious to hear the number for Bayo too.
Yeah, I assume it's probably a little bit less, but not by much, unless it's just going to be the same thing.
Right.
But I don't. Maybe he'll just cruise through the innings, and they won't need the pitch count. That would be ideal if he could limit the pitches. But you obviously want him to be stretched out, double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like I said earlier, it's an exciting time because these guys are getting healthy, and Whitlock looked really good in his throughout spring training and throughout his rehab through from hip surgery. So I would love to see Whitlock come out and just, whether it's 70 pitches, whether it's 4 or 5 strong innings, I'll take that. And then if we can get 2 good starts from 2 Red Sox potential starters on the same night, I'll be happy. I'll be happy. I will not sing on this podcast, but I will sing in my heart.
I think the cherry on top is what you talked about last episode with Paxton. I think that's just
Right.
a great positive. I've said it multiple times when regarding Paxton. I just wanted to see him go more than 1 inning. He really hasn't thrown more than 1 inning in a Red Sox uniform without getting injured.
Barely more than 1 pitch.
Yeah, seriously. And so it's nice to see guys starting to get more and more healthy, especially after with what happened with Adam Duvall, and just got to keep the positivity going. And Whitlock will be going against a very robust and hot Rays lineup, most likely on Tuesday. And he actually started against the Rays last season on April 23rd. Went 4 innings, only allowed 1 hit, struck out 7. Hopefully we can see something like that. But if we get something where he allows 2 runs or so, maybe walks a guy here or there, the control isn't exactly where you might want it to be, but is able to strike out 5 or 6, I think you got to be intrigued.
You have to be, right? I mean, what more do you want? He's not going to go out there and throw a perfect game. He's not going to go out there and throw a no-hitter. And for being the first start of the 2023 season, you don't get your hopes too high. But, it's like I said in the offseason, expect the unexpected and you'll never be surprised. So let's just hope for a solid start. And I think that's what Red Sox fans want. They've seen solid starts from their starters now for the last 4 games, 4 games. Let's just keep the good vibes rolling with this pitching because they were very strong against a red-hot Rays team. And yes, the Rays still are undefeated to start the season, but the Red Sox, I don't know if many people or even maybe the Rays didn't expect for the Red Sox to be this tough of an opponent, just given they were just swept by the Pirates, given all the question marks that this team has, and obviously winning the series against the Tigers and sweeping them. Red Sox had a lot of momentum on their side, and they played with that momentum on their side until that Brandon Lau home run.
I agree. And, I think the biggest question mark now is what will the move ultimately be when Whitlock is activated? And, I think the most obvious answers that, we've spoken about plenty when talking about, moves, DFAs, options, whatever. Caleb Ward, Ryan Brazier, I think those are the most obvious answers. But, asking some of you guys on Twitter, there was multiple people that brought up Cutter Crawford, which I was sort of surprised about. I get the aspect of stretching him out, but I think the ability to have a guy like, Crawford in the bullpen to be that long reliever or to, go 1 or 2 if you need him to is better flexibility than keeping Ord up there, who I understand is throwing the ball relatively well right now, but you've already seen, especially on opening day, he can't go more than 1 inning.
We talked about this a little bit before we started recording that we think we have the obvious moves. There's a few obvious moves that could be made, and they could have been made in the off season as well, and just they never were. So, and I understand the Crawford thing too. He's got options, but do you want to put him down there and then call him up for when he gets the start in the majors? But I don't know. I mean, this is I've said it throughout the offseason that I want players to make it difficult on Alex Cora to make these kinds of decisions. Caleb Ward has done that, and I'll give the guy his flowers. He's pitched well for most of his outings, but he needs to obviously continue to prove that. And he's not going to pitch in front of Alex Cora on Tuesday unless they don't make a move for him. But It's interesting because this bullpen was not supposed to be, well, it's not a huge question mark for this team. There were some people in there that were like, why, how are they still on this team? And there's still those questions going around certain players of why are they on this team? And you would think one of those guys would be the obvious move. So I'm intrigued to see, because I do think that there's strategical options like Cutter Crawford, and then there's obvious options like a Caleb Ward or Ryan Brazier. But maybe Caleb Ward isn't as obvious as he once was just because he's pitched well recently. But how short are these guys' leashes? Like we're about to find out, I guess.
And, you know, especially after what Ort was able to do, or excuse me, what Crawford was able to do against the Tigers in his last start. And you could say it's the Tigers, but at the same time, you know, he pitched really well. And
Right.
I think I always go back to this start. Like, I'll never forget it when we saw him pitch in Worcester and he allowed 7 earned runs, and then his next start up in Boston, he like shoved. Like, I understand the whole mindset of most people when you send somebody down to lower competition, like it's not going to hurt them. But I mean, it could. You know, there's evidence of it. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. Like, I was there, and that just makes me a little bit nervous. Now, like, that's like, you know, a needle in a haystack or whatever, you know, sort of comparison, haystack, whatever. But and it's a small sample compared to, you know, what he was able to do overall in Worcester in his starts when they did send him down. But then, you know, I also think back to, you know, what they did with Tanner Houck, you know, in 21. Not to say that they're going to do exactly that, but going back and forth. And, you know, I think there's so many different scenarios that they could go with it. But at the end of the day, you just got to try and not screw anybody up if he can. And I think if you send Ort down, I mean, he's going to be the same as that guy that he was up here. He's going to pitch 1 inning, and they're probably going to put him in the closer position in Worcester. You know, maybe you're be a platoon with AJ Politi as the closer down there, the setup man or whatever. But I'm very curious to see how everything does play out ultimately, not only with the Whitlock roster move, when Bayo comes back, you know, Paxton too, but you know, rather have more pitching than none, in my opinion. So very curious to see how, you know, Bayo and Whitlock are ultimately going to do today. But we're going to be keeping you updated about everything that is happening regarding the Boston Red Sox, not only with what happens on the field, but also off the field with all these injury updates. And if you want to stay tuned, we post this podcast 5 days a week. So if you want to subscribe and get notified when we do post, you can subscribe over on YouTube, and also you can press the little bell thing too, and it'll notify you as well. And then you can also listen on whatever audio platforms that you listen to. And also, if you want to be involved in an episode and, you know, have your opinion, you know, spoken about and reacted to from us, make sure to follow over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. Also follow myself. It's at Jake Iggy. And also follow Lauren. Is La 3 Laws. Lauren with 4 R's. But we want to thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen and check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and over on YouTube. But as always, we greatly appreciate everybody tuning into this episode. We'll end it how we always end it. I think, you know, this phrase is really needed right now, and this is why I added it into the ending. Keep the faith. Also, stay positive as well. And let's go Sox. Peace.